Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour.
Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde.
To our side event, All United for the Right to Abortion. We have the pleasure of being able to spend the next hour or so on this subject, and I should say that interpretation from French the other way round is available. Those of you who do not understand French should use one of the devices. Please, being able to access these would be important, and the other way around as well. So it's going to be in both English and French. Je vais en fait.
So I will go back and forth between English and French. For those who cannot understand both languages, please reach for your headset for these presentations and the discussions. I do have the pleasure to give the floor first for the introduction for the Minister Lemot, who he is the Minister President of Wallonia-Brussels Federation, who is in charge of women's rights and equal opportunities in Belgium. Mr. Minister, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. There are fundamental values and universal human rights. And as such, when we talk about these values and rights, that they are tend to rally men and women around the world beyond their differences. This reality is embodied by our diversity. The panelists and participants who are joining us today from around the world, they would like to feed this event that is organized by the Francophones of Belgium as a side event to the 63rd Commission on the Status of Women. And one of those themes that has this rally on quality, there is the decriminalization of abortion. This is a struggle that's been forever part of the demands of feminists to control their own body. It's always a liberation movement. It is a way to shed all these constraints that is sometimes moral, sometimes patriarchal, that weighs on the women, and they want to think of their life and their sexuality beyond the prism of reproduction. So the pressure of civil society has always been the engine of progress in this matter. And this pressure has led to an improvement of the legislations so women could be free to, if they want to have a children, and then to choose the moment to have this child. And that they are taken into account, the circumstances of their life. But women are living in very different situations from one continent to the other, from one state to the other. For example, in Europe, the right to abortion is really varied within Europe. And in other countries, the right does exist, and it's always been a right that has been won, that demanded courage, that demanded the courage of people like Simone Veil in France. And for my country, personality like Dr. Willie Pierce or the Senator Roger Lallemand. But in other countries, this right has a different path. Sometimes we see it waver under the assault of the pressures from the neoconservatives. In many places, this practice is constrained to be pushed to the shadows, whether under the weight of penalization or by shame. These, and there are many examples to talk about. So, for the 56 million abortions around the world, half of them are still in the shadows. And they have for consequence the death of 47,000 women per year. In the United States, nearly less than 100 years after his inauguration, President Trump has increased all sorts of measures against abortion. He cuts the aid to international organizations who provide abortion. And also, he opposed the federal funding for a family planning organization in the United States. In Italy, the new minister of family, Lorenzo Fontana, who is a member of the League, he declared that him, as a Catholic, he will reinforce all the organisms that tend to dissuade women from having abortion. And for him, the abortion is the first cause of feminicide in the world. In El Salvador, despite the liberation of Teodora Vesquez, who was sentenced because she had a miscarriage at 9 months of pregnancy, there are still 27 women are still imprisoned because of this law that criminalizes abortion. But I also have to look home in Belgium. So they had a very beautiful struggle to try to erase abortion from the criminal code. And but then we lost, and now this new law that was issued in 2008 constrains the abortion to 12 weeks of pregnancy, and now we have penalty that are foreseen if this law is not respected. So that's why this debate is very pressing, and people are active around it. And many places around the world, when this practice is forbidden or limited, there are movements of women who demand self-determination and reduce the risks of mortality from backstreet abortions. These examples give us reasons to also be optimistic. For example, we've seen in Spain and Poland, women went to the streets to defend their rights and that they have obtained, and to repeal draft laws that would limit right to abortion. In Ireland, we've seen 66.4% of the Irish people who voted to repeal this Eighth Amendment of their constitution that forbids abortion. And this allowed Leo Varadkar, who had a law that made abortion legal up to 12 months of pregnancy. So this strong mobilization is really heartwarming and gives me the conviction that this resistance, well organized, is worthwhile. So we have examples that this is the way to face all these reactive and conservative forces that are gaining ground, and we have to resist to reverse this dynamic. And in this sense, that's why the government of Wallonia-Brussels Federation has organized in last June an international forum saying that with one voice to united for the right of abortion. And this had a list of commitments and recommendation make sure that the right of abortion is a fundamental right. So we ask from all the countries of the world that this right is a health matter. And we ask the countries where it is the case, where abortion is considered a crime, that it be taken out from the criminal laws and could not be considered neither a crime or a misdemeanor. And also that the abortion should be covered by health insurance or whether it be state-owned or other services. And also we would like to remove any clause in a law for a specific conscience for health professional, because this is already provided for health providers. And also any limitation for this right should be penalized. And also we would like to have programs, education programs for people's emotional, relational life and also their sexual life. And also we would like to refuse any step that makes a fetus a legal person. And also we would like the information to be available for the women for their reproductive health. This is a list that corresponds to the many issues that are very tangible. This right is available for all women. So this list is also highlights all the road that is still ahead of us. But many organizations and institutions as important as the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the Council of Europe, the European Parliament, they're always reminding that this is a matter of democracy and fundamental human rights for women to control their own body. So we have to assemble all our forces and muster all our forces and energies. This is what the statement is at once modest and ambitious. And that's why we want this event and this will allow us to hear from people from around the world about all the limitation and all the stigmatization that surround abortion. So anything that would limit this, but these observations, they're just a departure point. We want to support the initiative that would like to preserve this women's right to control their own body. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end by saying this: the equality between men and women can only be conceived as a liberty for everybody to dispose of their life choices without any constraints. No matter what the circumstances are, that lead a woman for an unwanted pregnancy, the space of freedom that the state should be or the government should provide is not something that is negotiable. Like the right to vote and the right to contraceptive, the right for abortion is one of the pillars on which is built the emancipation of women. It needs to be defended as such. This right needs to be recognized as an inalienable, fundamental right and not subject to statute limitation. So we have to act for this right to be recognized as such and not called into question by any government. Everybody, no matter where he is or she is, can contribute. I am proud to be one of the founders of this initiative that is a testament to the will of the Wallonia-Brussels Federation to take its part of responsibility in this shared responsibility. Thank you so much for your presence and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for entering right into the subject matter, to the core of our topic today and to bring us back to rights and women's rights to determine how their bodies are used, and that abortion not be treated under criminal law, but that health, the right to health, be upheld, and that this brings us back to democracy and human rights and the values that my organisation, the Council of Europe, fights for. I would like to draw your attention to the Brussels Declaration, which is copied in the room. You have on the screen a link, the URL, the address to which you can go so that you can, if you would like, sign the declaration and join the Brussels Declaration. So just before I pass the floor to our next speaker, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that the Council of Europe, 47 member states, doesn't have a unified position in every detail about abortion, but there are basic rights, as the Minister has mentioned. There are basic rights that the Council of Europe has been able to recognise through the case law, specifically of the European Court of Human Rights. And I can draw your attention also to a report by our Human Rights Commissioner on women's sexual and reproductive health and rights in Europe. This actually summarises as well the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sylvie Lausberg. I'll switch now to French. Sylvie Lausberg est historienne, diplômée de l'université.
She is a historian. She is from the University of Bruxelles. She's the director of the Studies of Department of the Secular Center. She was elected. She has published many books about the history of abortion and has done a documentary about the body of women.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this morning. And first of all, I would like to thank Minister President and the former Minister of Rights of Women in Belgium for this important declaration. It's important to reiterate officially freedom of choice and the right to self-determination of women to continue a pregnancy or not. It's also a right to health, a fundamental right. I will begin with an overview of the abortion issue as it stands nowadays in Europe. You can find it in the print in the entrance in French and English. And then an overview on the condition of women in places where abortion is either forbidden or largely stigmatized. Abortion used to be regarded as a crime and was referred to as such in the Penal Code. In most European countries, legislation was amended in the late quarter of the 20th century, and it was agreed to medicalize abortion more or less at the same time as the amendment to the laws. I would like to point out that the laws were amended for specific reasons. In France, for instance, it was implemented by a feminist movement and the Bobigny court case in 1972. 5 women were at trial: the underage girl who had been raped and was pregnant, and 4 adult women, including the girl's mothers. This trial was instrumental in decriminalizing voluntary termination in pregnancy. In 1975, it's the Simone Veil law, as Minister President mentioned. In Belgium, on the other hand, a doctor, Willy Pees, had performed abortion in the 70s in his hospital. to help women who had not enough money to cross the border, because it's also a question of social justice. Because a popular uprising, he was released of jail. But abortion remained in the penal code in Belgium until a few months. But at this time, the government eventually allowed contraception. This took place in the 20th century. What about the 21st century? You remember Ireland. Ireland amended its law on abortion because of the death of Savita Alapanavar. She wanted to have a baby. She birthed twins, but she had a miscarriage, and doctors refused to help her. She died, and the twins too. One more time, it's due to a popular anger that in Ireland, abortion was finally declared legal last spring. The point I want to make here is the following. Unless people become aware of what is at stake in abortion, the health, the right to live for women, nothing will ever change. I will tell you why. These reasons why governments are unlikely to change spontaneously are firstly pressure of religion, secondly historical backgrounds, and most importantly, because legislation focuses on the supremacy of men over women. Consequently, regarding sexuality, the penalty used to be heavier for women than it was for men. And furthermore, legislation highlights the single responsibility of the woman. For instance, in the case of an abortion, she is the one who bears the entire responsibility, and the man is left out of the picture. However, if she cannot have an abortion for whatever reasons, and if she remains pregnant against her will, nobody cares about the consequences of the pregnancy. For example, problems at work or any medical disease linked with pregnancy or risks associated with the birth and eventually raising a child on her own without a father. That's why I would like now to talk about countries where abortion is illegal. The rate of abortions is higher when it's illegal. Therefore, in such cases, we are facing backstreet illegal abortions which are unsafe and highly dangerous. Annual deaths worldwide range more than 40,000 according to the World Health Organization. And let's look at South America, where abortion is generally forbidden. In recent years, a powerful feminist movement protests to legalize abortion in Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, and so on. You heard that in Argentina, they nearly won a vote in parliament, but it was blocked by Senate and the church. We are back where we started. The debate was relaunched a few weeks ago after the rape of an 11-year-old girl by her grandmother's boyfriend. He made her pregnant, and the girl's mother took legal action for rape. But the court delivered a verdict much too late to prevent the girl from having an abortion. She was already 5 months pregnant, and the fetus had to be removed by cesarean section. Do you believe it? It has a slight chance of survival, and the girl's life was in danger. Women in Argentina are expressing their anger, and the way this case was handled, and now maybe they will succeed to force an amendment of the law. If we look at Africa, abortion are taboo for cultural reasons. It doesn't stop women from resorting to abortion. So before looking at a few slides, I would like to add that the consequences of backstreet abortion are a collective responsibility. Why? Because in most cases, these women are also mothers. When they die, they leave orphans behind, and we are responsible for this. So what does the law in Europe say about abortion? So the first criterion is the time limit for having an abortion. You can see on this slide that 12 weeks is the time chosen by most governments as the time limit for abortion. We tend to focus on the number of weeks, but we lose sight of obstacles and barriers which are deeply rooted in local mentalities, such as lack of information, reflection time, which is compulsory, and therefore puts the pregnant woman under pressure because she is in a race against time. Let's have a look on Germany, for example, where until now it's prohibited to inform women that they are allowed to have an abortion. In fact, this government decision is based on a Nazi law dating back from 1933. It's a law whereby promoting and advertising abortion was considered to be a criminal offense. All doctors were aware of this prohibition, but one of them violated the law in 2018. He was convicted and fined €6,000 for providing information on his website. This doctor infringement triggered an amendment in Parliament, which is currently underway, to cancel the prohibition of providing information on abortion. So the point I want to make here is the following. Nothing will ever change unless this kind of law is violated by somebody, a doctor, for example, to save human life, to save a woman's life. For a law to be amended in Parliament, action must be taken by civil society, either in the form of a protest or a violation of the law. What about Italy? In Italy, the law is acceptable because it's allows abortion up to 19 days. But for the law to be effective, you need proper access. What do we have here? 80% of doctors refuse to perform abortion for conscience claim. These objectors make it difficult to have an abortion. And since the election of Matteo Salvini, who has pulled Italy to the far right, abortion has been more and more stigmatized because its government favors a pro-birth policy. So what we have in Italy is pressure from the church on doctors and women plus political pressure. It's the same pattern in Hungary, where abortion is legal, but it's not made easy or convenient. Access is denied. Therefore, it's almost impossible for Hungarian women to have an abortion. So if we have religious and political pressure, combined with the extreme right movement in parliament and in government, here in purple in Europe, we can conclude that even if abortion is legalized and accepted, we could have a swing in the opposite direction. This is why we should support public position statements which are assertive as this one. The aim is to counteract these attacks in Europe, but also support countries of South America, Africa, and worldwide. We have to work towards fundamental abortion rights of women who represent half part of the population. And I will end with a last slide. Social protection system and access to public services are priority themes in this United Nations session. This is why I will end my presentation by linking abortion with social security issues. If you look at the slide, you will see that the European countries in purple are those where abortion are reimbursed. As you can see, the situation is acceptable, but the aim is to ensure that conditions improve in other countries so that women can be protected by social security system in the case of abortion. I hope I have succeeded in proving that the right to abortion is a fundamental right, an indication of the level of democracy and of the respect of the basic right to the physical and psychological integrity of women. I thank you.
Sylvie, for walking us through what is a very complex variety of laws and practices in Europe. This difference between the law and effective access to abortion it goes to the weaknesses of the system and what political upheavals and changes can affect the effective enjoyment of rights. Like I said before, the European situation also at the Council of Europe that is reflected in the case law of the European Court of Human Rights shows this difference. And whereas the subject of abortion is the right itself is left to individual states to determine, where the court has been very firm is where it has identified the practical obstacles to that right. So once a country X decides that, yes, abortion is legal and not to be criminalized, however, if in practice women encounter obstacles that make it impossible for them to exercise that right, then the court has been very strong in underlining those problems and has come up with a body of case law which is, I think, very interesting for this discussion. So we turn now to our next speaker. Elle va nous parler en français, Madame Justine Mécouy.
Was Miss Justine Mécouy, who is a midwife at the University Hospital Center in Libreville in Gabon. Miss Mécouy is also a trainer in abortions to reduce the death of from backstreet abortion. She's a practitioner who will talk to you about this issue that has been brought up by the minister, who told us that feminicide is one of the reasons. Is what brings the greatest rate of feminicide is coming from abortion. So Ms. Mécouy, she's the coordinator of the Central Africa Network for Women's Reproductive Health in Gabon. Ms. Mécouy, you have the floor. I cannot start my presentation without thanking the Wallonia-Brussels Federation, and I will tell you about the struggle of my NGO in Gabon with regards to abortion. So, for the beginning, the legal framework in Gabon makes abortion illegal. The young women and the women in reproductive age, they are, left to backstreet abortions, and that really reduces their life. So the network of Central Africa for women's reproductive rights have action. They want to reduce the morbidity rate from backstreet abortions. What is the strategy of our network? Our strategy is to promote of the estriates, the manual estriate, which is MVA. So we cannot talk about abortion. So we do. What is this? This manual aspiration is really to suck the content of the uterus. This is the manual aspiration. This is to actually empty what's in the uterus. This is the first training that has been made in 2009 by Dr. Ablas Maraika, and that was with the directors of health. And after our training, I started to give trainings in the capital, in Libreville, with this manual aspiration. We have the other image after another training in the southern Gabon. Here we have a training during the International Day for Midwives. We continued our training at the manual aspiration. And what is the result of all this training? The result is I am in another country, a neighboring country in Gabon, in Cameroon, where they gave me a certification as a trainer for manual aspiration. And here we have a woman that was saved during a training for manual aspiration. And you have all the trainees who were trained. And here you have a woman who was saved after her backstreet abortion at the medical center of Bitam. And here you have another woman who came in shock after her backstreet abortion, who was saved at the hospital in Libreville. And here you have, he was, that I trained myself. She didn't want her picture to be published, and I do respect that. And she was also saved. What are our difficulties? So the banning of abortion, the stigmatization of women, and this leads women to backstreet abortion, and then they have difficulty accessing treatments and care after abortion, which in turn raises the morbidity for mothers. So the obstacles, so we have lack of funding to train people, and also we have a lack in coverage for women, and this practice, the people, they don't recognize this practice saves the lives of women. And now here we don't have cars to move around. And as we say back in Africa, it's very difficult. And to conclude, in 1998, the WHO, they said that an abortion that is performed in good conditions is 14 times than a backstreet and 41 times less dangerous than a C-section, and oftentimes less dangerous than oral contraceptive. So you have the reference, that's in English. And the women in our log, they have the right to control their own body. They have the right to give birth in security. And the other one has the right also to have an abortion that is safe. Thank you so much for your good attention.
Thank you very, very much, and it's interesting and indeed moving to hear about the kinds of challenges and conditions in which you have to operate in order to save potential victims, to help protect women from the most nefarious effects of backstreet abortions, and thank you very, very much for sharing this with us. I will now turn to our next speaker from Argentina. The situation in Argentina has been already mentioned a couple of times, but we have with us a specialist, Nina Samperlin. She's a social scientist specialized in sexual and reproductive health, a senior program officer for the Safe Abortion Unit at the International Planned Parenthood Federation, which is in the Western Hemisphere region. She's based in Buenos Aires. Her professional work focuses on reproductive health research with an emphasis on abortion, policy design and implementation, and training of healthcare professionals. She's author and co-author of 45 publications. Her presentation will focus on the recent developments that took place in Argentina around the abortion law reform that have inspired a growing feminist movement in Latin America. Ms. Zamperlin, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm extremely pleased and honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your interest in Argentina. And thank you for this wonderful Brussels Declaration. IPPF is a leader in the movement for sexual and reproductive health and rights in the Americas and the Caribbean. Together with our network of 45 local partners, we work to achieve a world where all people can exercise their sexual and reproductive rights. Today, I will share with you the developments that took place in Argentina around abortion rights, also known as the Argentine Green Wave. This is the story of a victory which cannot yet be measured in terms of concrete legal wins, but it's still a huge victory in terms of the consolidation of an incredibly strong social movement around women's right to choose. Today in Argentina, as in many other parts of the world, the feminist movement is the strongest social movement fighting for equality and justice, and no other force is motivating such active civic engagement. In Argentina, abortion is a crime that's penalized with jail time, except when pregnancy results from rape or when the women's movement or when the woman's life or health is in danger. This has been so since 1921. However, legal abortions have been extremely hard or impossible to obtain, especially by poor women. This has gradually begun to change since 2012 due to a Supreme Court ruling, but access is still limited and unequal throughout the country. An estimated 500,000 illegal abortions are performed every year, and unsafe abortion is the leading cause of maternal death. 50,000 women are hospitalized for abortion complications every year. Argentina has a history of strong social movements, mostly in relations to labor rights, but also in terms of human rights, in reaction to one of the cruelest military dictatorships in Latin America. Argentines have a long-standing capacity to mobilize against injustices. The National Campaign for the Right to Legal, Safe, and Free Abortion is an umbrella organization comprised of 300 groups that was created in 2005 and has been the main social actor in abortion rights ever since. The campaign's slogan is "Sex education to decide, contraceptives not to abort, legal abortion not to die." This chain of arguments shows a comprehensive approach where all three elements are fundamental: sex education, contraception, and abortion. In a participatory and democratic manner, the campaign elaborated a bill to decriminalize and legalize abortion up to 14 weeks, and after that time, in cases of rape and risk to the woman's life or health. They gathered the support of enough legislators to formally present the bill 7 times in 13 years, but prior to 2018, the bill had never advanced in Congress. It would always expire and they would, introduce it again. What was different this time? It was basically the synergy and conjunction of different forces. The greater visibility of feminism at the international level, under Me Too, Time's Up, the Women's March, the Irish referendum, and locally, the resistance against increasing gender-based violence, which led to the formation of the Ni Una Menos, or Not One Less movement, which means not another woman's life lost to gender violence. They are demanding also not another death caused by unsafe abortion, identifying the legal prohibition of abortion as a form of gender violence. And last but not least, in March 2018, the president of Argentina announced that abortion could be discussed in Congress. It was groundbreaking because no precedent had ever allowed the debate before. But President Macri has always positioned himself against abortion. Next. So the bill started making its way through the lawmaking process. Hearings were held where academics, activists, scientists, philosophers, lawyers, doctors, religious leaders, public opinion leaders, writers, both supporting and rejecting the right to abortion, presented their points of view. We heard brilliant and solid arguments from the highest qualified speakers, but also the most insane lies and misogynist, twisted, dogmatic arguments. Many times before 2018, politicians would avoid addressing the abortion issue, arguing that society wasn't ready or mature enough to discuss it. Now that 700 speakers expressed themselves in Congress and that millions took to the streets, things will never be the same. Abortion is out of the closet. The movement grew at a very fast pace, and the campaign was active and creative in building social support. The green handkerchief became the widespread symbol for abortion legalization, proudly worn around necks and wrists. By the way, we have pañuelos, handkerchiefs here for you to take. Please help yourself. One remarkable thing in this process was the participation of young women, including high school students. A feminist journalist called this the revolution of the daughters, a juvenile spring, a movement whose main protagonists are adolescents and young women who felt inspired to take to the streets with their message and to discuss it in social media, at home, or in school. The world was watching Argentina during this process. International support and solidarity were extraordinary, not only in the press and social media, but pañuelazos were organized in Latin America and around the world in places like Australia, Belgium, England, France, Japan, the Netherlands, Spain, here in New York, and many other places. The vote in the lower house was scheduled for June 13th. Throughout the 22-hour debate, hundreds of thousands of women gathered in the bitter cold outside the Congress Palace in Buenos Aires. We stayed there all night. Finally, the bill passed on the morning of June 14. It was a tight vote, 129, 125. We literally didn't have the votes until the last minute. Then came the Senate, which is a much more conservative and right-wing, and where the representation of the most conservative provinces has significant weight. Of course, the Catholic Church actively intervened to block the law reform. Pope Francis, whose home country is Argentina, you probably know, and the bishops put enormous pressure on senators. The anti-choice movement that was sure the bill wouldn't pass in the lower house became much more active and aggressive during the Senate debate. They quickly created their own symbol, the light blue handkerchief, and came out with a slogan to save both lives. They had massive demonstrations and widespread media coverage. Our IPPF partners in Argentina were subject to constant online attacks and harassments, and their offices were vandalized. On August 9, abortion legalization was narrowly defeated by a 31-38 vote and 2 abstentions. The majority of the no votes were cast by men over the age of 50. It was a very cold, rainy, gray, sad, and frustrating day. So where are we now? Women keep dying from unsafe abortions. A few days after the Senate voted down the bill, a woman died from the consequences of unsafe abortion in Pilar, the town where I live. A few days later, another one, and then another one. Last Monday, while I was here in New York, another case in the province of Catamarca. Many more will die if legislators do not understand that this debate is not about whether you are for or against abortion. It has to do with legal versus clandestine abortions, safe versus unsafe abortions. The 38 senators who voted against the bill and who are listed there will be personally and directly responsible for the deaths of these women. Next. Anti-choice forces are now stronger, more coordinated, and highly motivated. The negative result in the Senate empowered anti-choice groups to increase their attacks, which now have expanded beyond abortion to sex education. Those who opposed legalization of abortion, arguing that sex education was the solution for unwanted pregnancies, are now against a bill to make sex education mandatory in the entire educational system. Pretty contradictory. They are obstructing and limiting access to what's already legal, like abortion in cases of rape. Just a few weeks ago, 2 young girls, aged 11 and 12, pregnant because of sexual abuse, were denied access to legal abortion and were forced to have a C-section at 23 weeks instead. The women's movement was very active, publicly denouncing these human rights violations. Denial of abortion is torture. Argentina is having presidential elections this October. In an electoral year, there won't be legislative support for abortion reform. Even the allied Green legislators who were key actors in 2018 understand 2019 as a different political time. The focus is there for 2020, so the efforts are geared towards supporting pro-choice candidates. And don't forget that all this is happening in the context of one of the most severe economic crises Argentina has ever faced. But let's end with a hopeful look to the future. The massive pro-choice mobilizations in Argentina have resounded across Latin America, where 97% of women live in countries where abortion is highly restricted or completely illegal. The Green Wave has inspired the Latin American region and multiplied from Brazil to Mexico, from Chile to Venezuela, from Peru to Costa Rica, from Bolivia to Ecuador, where the call for legal abortion has intensified, and these countries' political institutions are paying more attention to feminist activism. This became very evident last Friday on International Women's Day, where every rally in the region had its green. On the side of civil society, the struggle for abortion rights has by no means declined. It keeps getting stronger and expanding. The green pañuelo is still worn tied to backpacks and handbags. There is no doubt that the wave will continue to gain strength thanks to the energy and the passion of all those who believe that there is no gender equality without reproductive autonomy. Despite the disappointment of having been so close to legalizing abortion, we know that we're making history. 2018 was a turning point, and we have the momentum on our side. Change is coming. We're strong, we're millions, we're not afraid, we're determined, we're angry, we're together, we're optimistic. We have unlimited energy, we're unstoppable. We will keep fighting until we win. It will be law. Que sea ley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nina Zamperlin, for taking us, presenting to us what the groundswell of feminist activism can achieve. In spite of the failure in the Senate, it came closer than ever before in affecting reform in Argentina. And it's something really to be admired. I turn now to our final speaker on this panel, and we're running a bit short of time, so we've asked her to be brief. Her name is Lenita Freidenvall. She's Deputy Head of the Division for Gender Equality from the Swedish Ministry of Health and Social Affairs. She's an advisor on gender equality to the feminist government of Sweden. And she's Associate Professor of Political Science at Stockholm University. Madame Freidenvall, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, and good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me to this side event on this important topic. And please let me start to say how delighted I am to be here today for being able to present the Swedish position and the Swedish abortion law, but also to listen to your excellent presentation. So thank you. I would also like to say that I'm replacing somebody else in my delegation, so please bear that in mind during my presentation here. So I will talk about the Swedish abortion law. The right to safe and legal abortion is in place in Sweden. It is also something that we take for granted in the Nordics. And in many ways, we take this for granted due to the many activities and the lobbying and pressure from civil society organizations. Let me start with some numbers. Every day, 830 women and girls die because of pregnancy or during childbirth. Every day. 1 out of 5 girls under the age of 18 in the world is married, and more than 200 million women and girls in developing countries lack access to contraceptives. Approximately 16 million girls aged 15 to 19 years give birth every year. The risk of dying because of pregnancy or during childbirth is twice as high for girls between 15 and 19 compared to women over 20 years of age. Every year, about 25 million women and girls go through unsafe abortions. Abortions cause nearly 13% of pregnancy-related deaths. Behind all these numbers, there are figures. There are women and girls that do not get their rights fulfilled. Women and girls who suffer. Women and girls who are denied their lives in freedom, the fundamental human rights. Women and girls who perhaps will die at an early age. It is for these women and girls that the Swedish government is pursuing universal and affordable access to sexual and reproductive health and rights across the world. Our struggle is on their behalf. In Sweden, abortion was first legislated in 1938. The Abortion Act stated that an abortion could be legally performed upon medical, humanitarian, or eugenical grounds. The law was later revised in 1946 to include socio-medical grounds, and again in 1963 to include the risk of serious fetal damage. Then in 1974, a new law was adopted. It states that a decision to go through an abortion is entirely up to the woman to make until the end of the 18th week, 18 plus 6 days. After that, abortion are allowed until the day before 24 weeks, that 21 weeks plus 6 days, with permission, if there are extraordinary reasons. And permission is granted by the National Board of Health and Welfare in Sweden. Today, between 35,000 and 38,000 women in Sweden go through an abortion each year. The number of teenagers who go through an abortion has decreased during the past decade. About 12 girls aged 15 to 19 per 1,000 inhabitants go through an abortion each year. 84% of abortions are done before week 9. Only 1% of abortions are done between week 18 and 22. The right to safe and free abortions is important for the Swedish government. Every woman and girl's right to decide over her own body, sexuality, and childbirth is central. To further safeguard young women's sexual and reproductive health and rights, and to diminish the risk of unwanted pregnancies, birth control is free for everyone under 21 years of age. Comprehensive sexuality education in schools has been in place since the 50s. Even in Sweden, the right for women and girls to make their own decisions when it comes to abortions has been questioned from certain groups in the past few years. Although these groups are small, it means that women's and girls' rights can never be taken for granted, and it's vital that we keep defending the right to safe and legal abortions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for explaining to us the positive effect of what a feminist policy on abortion can produce. Lowering of abortions. The lowering. It speaks for itself. I would like to now, with the very little time that we have left, allow for a couple of questions. Let me just also say a final plug for the Council of Europe as education on sexual and reproductive rights has been mentioned. We also produce some material on this, and I have copies of it here. Now, I need to be rather brutal. I'm going to give the floor to this gentleman at the back. Please be very brief. It's not a statement that you're asked to make. It's a question. And
Hi everyone, my name is Jose Andres, and I'm from Ecuador, and I have very brief. Okay. When we are talking about abortion, we know that any woman doesn't want that because that is inhuman. But in the same way, we know that our fight is not with babies, it's with the rapist. Our first idea that it will be to prevent abortion, not to produce it. Our idea is to eradicate sexual violence, protecting the same way boys and girls with a harmful behavior. We cannot forget about so many people who can't have children by their own and are willing to receive and love the baby, that many young women are not able to. It is stated that abortion is a fundamental right, but there isn't a more fundamental right than life, the two lives. My question is that why you don't tell any other thing that abortion? You only
this panel is about abortion,
okay.
But I understand your question, and I need to give the space to other people to put a question to. I'm going to take two more questions, and then we can get some reactions. Please, the young lady in the front.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mariana Garza from Mexico. I'm 16 years old, and my question is, what is happening to women that will suffer after abortion, women that will have an injured uterus, women who won't stop bleeding, who will suffer infections, disruptions in menstruation, infertility with no organic cause, abdominal troubles, sexual disorders, migraine, anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, many other physical and psychological consequences.
Thank you. And one last question in the front here. I think, yes, thank you.
My name is Maria Versig. I'm an activist from Germany and a lawyer for reproductive rights. I want to thank this panel for your fight, and I want to ask you, how should we carry on as a global movement? What is the next step? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm going to ask all of our panelists to react to the three questions put. Please, who would like to begin?
We have 15 more. Just very quickly, very short. I just want to mention that regarding your question, all the items that you mentioned are the consequences of unsafe abortion. Safe abortions do not bring about any of those consequences. So a way to eradicate everything that you mentioned would be to legalize abortion and to have legal and safe abortions in the healthcare system.
Any other reactions from the panel? please, we have another question then.
Thank you. I'm Aurora Madauda from the Catalan Parliament. I was wondering that, as we have already seen, this right to abortion is in danger in many countries, although there are laws accepting this right to abortion. So my question is, what do you think has to do international bodies like the European Union or the United Nations in the defense of the right of all women, despite where they are, despite where they are from? So in fact, I was thinking about the European Union, since and in the panel we have some people from the European Union. But I'm asking to the international bodies, how are they going to work to protect this human right for every woman? No wonder where they are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now only time for responses now from the panel. I'm told we have to leave the room.
Oui, je vais répondre à la question.
So I will answer the question, what are the levers in the international organization? Of course, we have to change the paradigm, we have to change this vision, and we have to change the question whether we are for or against, whether on the level of the European Union or international, how do we protect the life of women independently of all these sexuality questions. It's not whether to have sex or not. It's an issue of protection of women. It's a fundamental human right, and we need to have it on the European level and international level. So this question, which is a right to health, because it's a health act, it's very complicated, and it's not the case in Europe. The countries where it's at least partially legal have to drag the other countries to force the international bodies to. I believe this is a very momentous time. It is not time to back, and we want the laws to go further. If we get this on the level of the country, we can push that on the European level. Thank you.
I have to end here. I'm afraid there can be no more time for questions. I'd just like to say, thank our panelists for their excellent interventions. And recall maybe one remark about violence, about perceiving the absence of the right to abortion, or the ill effects of clandestine or of illegal and lawful abortions, the ill effects of them as a form of violence, of gender-based violence. And if governments are to understand it this way, a lot can be done also to address the issues that were raised in some of the remarks from the floor. Thank you very, very much, and enjoy the rest of the CSW.